a little bit about
The time
time
capsule.
capsule?
Yes. Has anyone heard about the time capsule? Yeah, I think Dr. Solas has sent a few emails about it already. But basically, we decided to do one set to open in 2045, just because like that's when the technological singularity is predicted to happen. And so we went to Dr. Solas's storage unit. We picked up like a few things that we thought would be interesting to like open in 20 years. But I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go around in a circle and see if anybody has any ideas of like what we could include. I've been kind of like stumped on this for the past little while just because like things are changing, but I'm like, I don't know like what would be interesting in 20 years to like look back on. I know Dr. Solas, like he showed a few items which are great, but it's good to get some new ideas going. So we can start with you. It could be anything if there's no restrictions, just something kind of related to the course content.
I have no idea. Maybe like books that are popular right now in like the 2020s, but specifically about maybe tech and AI.
Mhm.
So maybe like some trending books or anything that are popular right now.
I also don't know. Maybe like news articles or printouts of like whatever's really important or like the big things from this year, for example. I feel like a lot of places do like kind of year in review, so that might be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
So one
Solas.
source of content, I think, is the kind of big part of the time capsule. I mean, the items that I brought today would fit in a small container thus far, but the life-size cutouts, which we're also going to make part of this, obviously they're life-size, so you know they're 6 foot or more. And one of those people who were captured from the class in 2020, Eduardo, wrote to me in detail about his belief that he's quite happy for those cutouts to be used for any purpose we wish in the future, and happy to be a part of the time capsule and that sort of thing, and not inclined to put any, you know, restrictions or particular rules, requirements. So he's kind of setting a good model for the other people. His facial expressions and so on, it just looks like he's a very fun-loving guy, and he was. He and his girlfriend both took the course, and they had a lovebird that used to come and sit on their shoulder when they were talking and stuff like that. And yeah, so we, by 2045, you know, it will be interesting. Those people will still be out there and will have accomplished a lot more than they have today, right? And so it will be interesting to see, like, get some idea of what they were like in 2020, and then how their lives have, you know, evolved in the next, you know, many years. I would also say you guys don't have to think up all the answers, right? Because what we said is we're going to put this time capsule together over 2.5 years using 5 different classes of the course. So, you know, like maybe it's actually stimulating if like people from January 2024 watch this video, say, oh my God, they left out all the important things, and yeah, right. So anyway, maybe that'll be good. So, you know, a spectacular performance where every single one of you hit it out of the park and, you know, say, wow, what a great suggestion. You know, that might put them off, that they can never compete with you guys. Whereas this way, you know, they'll be relaxed that, you know, our ideas about the time capsule are as good as what people had in 2023 and 2022. Yeah. So in that sense, there are no wrong answers or bad answers when the rest of you. So what do you think? What are your ideas?
I've been rewatching Grey's Anatomy again, so I guess maybe like something, I would say like maybe even like a suture kit or something, just to compare surgical items like that are being used so commonly now compared to 2045, and how maybe like things get more advanced, stuff like that. Would be cool to compare later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know if somebody like has one of these lying around, but maybe like a broken down cell phone from today, like an iPhone or something, and see where that side of technology takes us in 20-ish years. I think that would be cool. And I also want to think of something like practical, like I feel like something like a water bottle has been so robust for who knows how many, like hundreds of years, but again, technology is advancing so fast right now that we might find something very innovative in the next little while that might make this obsolete.
Yeah. No, that's
I'm trying to think, I know social media is so big right now, and I think it's had so much of an impact on so many people, and how people choose to live their lives and through academics. I think something including social media, I'm not sure like what exactly. Also like certain art projects, all art sculptures, comparing what that looks like now and compared to like many years down the road, like how that perspective has changed. Yeah, and like publications from research, and how publications look like in the future. So.
I'm going to speak more sentimentally just because I have a lot of souvenirs from when I went on the Ramones trip many years ago. So I think including some souvenirs. Besides that, I'm a little bit of a runner, so maybe putting in like a running shoe, something like that, see how like the technology advances in terms of that sportswear.
So the France trip, which has been a part of this course for a while, and many of you have done that, you know, it's sort of changing in that there are more other learners, other trainees there now. So you sort of get diluted out. It isn't like Georgina Piccoli learns a lot about you now because you hardly see her because, you know, there are many layers between you and her. Whereas when it started, it wasn't really like that. But also there were other bad things about how hot it got and things, right? There were some very unpleasant times in the original years. Yeah, but in the beginning, I got detailed feedback about each student, and that didn't happen at all. This time there was just this silence. When everybody came back, I found that everybody was safe and sound back in Canada, and there were no reports at all. And I think that's because your direct interactions were with other junior people that they haven't really assessed whether those are trustworthy people. So, you know, whether they really care what they say about you or whatever, you know. So it's sort of interesting from that point of view, the way situations evolve. And what's happening in the next year, of course, the 2024 BAMP Transplant Pathology meeting is in Paris. So it's another France experience. And I suspect there'll be people associated with the course or in kidney pathology training, you know, fellows and stuff. I mean, people at least associated with me in some way who are helping us with that 2024 BAMF meeting. We think it'll be highly consequential, the things that occur there and so on. So that's really quite different from the LAMAN's experience. One of the difficulties in the beginning was finding Dr. Piccoli when you got there, right? You confirmed that you were in the right city, this is the right hospital, It took an extremely long time to find her, right? Yeah, yeah.
I remember walking around for a couple of hours. And then I showed up to the hospital, and then they sent me to the dormitory. And then I was like, I'm supposed to be here, right? And they're like, nope. And then so I just got sent back to the other end of the city where I came from, where I lived.
Yeah, so there was a certain randomness. Now, what I predict in the next year, you're probably going to be shocked by this, but if you think about your leisure time, it is genuinely random for most of you. It isn't very planned. You spontaneously decide to do things, and you know, there's not a lot of purpose behind it, right? But think of the things that may occur in less than a year. People are talking about AGI potentially occurring in September 2024. I mean, that's less than a year from now. It's the possibility Donald Trump may be president in 2024 and end, you know, democracy in the United States and stuff. So does purposeless leisure time make sense for you now? I don't think so. It'd be better if the things you enjoy doing in your leisure time, like let's say it's video games, right? So rather than just some random video game, there'll be a new video game that's all about restoring democracy to the US, right? So it would be as good as the other video games you used to do. It's just more purposeful, right? And it's sort of training you, or you know, training you to talk back to Chat GPT, or you know, even at the GPT-5 level, and how to deal with the fact that it's clear you're dealing with a being that's smarter than you are, but you're human, it isn't, you know, and so, yeah. So it seems to me, and there'll be a video of me pitching this on this coming Saturday morning, that surprisingly, almost everybody has a strong argument in their lives for more purposeful leisure time. Not different activities, like whatever you do for leisure, you'd still do. But like, let's say you're doing running, but you're running now to like, to try to convey to Chat GPT what you do at the gym or what exercise is, because that's not something they can intellectually understand. They can't do anything like that, right? So you're trying to think, well, how do I feel now? How would I explain this to a machine? Is there some experience we can give to a machine that would be like exercise, or what should they understand about this, you know, or something else, you know? How to make Donald Trump exercise and quit the presidency, right? I don't know. Yeah, but in other words, not becoming unhappy by no longer doing the things that you enjoy doing in your leisure time, but just having it be more meaningful when it looks like in the next year something very dramatic is going to happen, and you should be out there doing something about it, right? Rather than just gauging it. And the same is true for music and art. When machines are significantly smarter than we are, there'll still be an interim period where it's in everybody's interest for machines to still kind of explain to us what we're doing, although we can't really understand it because we don't have the intellect. And we think that ineffable content and poetry, music, and art can somehow fill in that gap, that maybe there'd be a certain kind of music that would give us the sense of what the machines are doing, even though we can't completely wrap our head around it, right? So almost anything that you're interested in passionately, you can think of a way to make it purposeful, you know, and say, and that later on, somebody would ask you a question that nobody ever used to ask, which was, what was your purposeful leisure activity in 2024? You know? Who says things like that? Well, nobody ever has, because we've never been in a situation like that before, right? But I think now we will be. Yeah, so, so are you inspired about anything about the, what we've been talking about, or the time capsule content, or anything else?
I was thinking about last week with the virtual reality, and I bet in
Yeah.
20 years that is gonna change dramatically. It already has in the past, decade or so, but I think it's gonna be much more helpful in our daily lives and even training people and, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of experiences, like the idea that to be good at anything you have to spend 10,000 hours. Although certainly that won't be the case in the future. You know, machines can teach them things in a few seconds. We'll probably have, you know, silicon implants in our brains and stuff to augment our intellect, and they will maybe contain the instructions of how to do something that we will instantly know as soon as the implant's there, right? Nobody has to train us or anything. But still there's a role for simulation, and I think the virtual reality thing, it works both ways. Like when you're learning something genuinely new that you need to share with other people, capturing it using full 3D video with multiple cameras and stuff, and conveying that to another person is a highly effective way of sort of giving them the muscle memory and the other things, and the sort of the parts of things you learn that are not based on words and formulas, but on different kinds of how it feels to do something. Yeah. So. Okay. So, Angela, what are your thoughts about?
So since ChatGPT is really big right now, and it's kind of like AI in a sense, I was thinking maybe you could 3D print the logo or something for ChatGPT, so we could look back and be like, remember when it started getting really big and everyone was using it? So maybe that. And on a more kind of pop culture side, since pop culture still plays a really big part of our society, I'm thinking maybe including like a AirAs poster, because that's really big right now.
Yeah. Okay. So any thoughts to add? You've been part of this course for longer than anybody else, right?
So I'm gonna go back to the virtual reality thing. So
Yeah.
how long until it advances to the point where we can't tell the difference between real life and reality, and people get so engulfed into
Yeah.
the virtual?
Or where it's actually better, where it's more satisfying than real life, that, you know, machines can figure out what motivates us better than we ourselves can, and can make us more motivated by simulated experiences than by real ones. So when that happens, will that be bad?
Potentially.
Yes. But it's hard to know what's bad, right? So for those of you who watched Rich Sutton's teaching session on November the 9th, it was really surprising to me the ideas that he put forward there. But I realized that it really expanded all of our minds. I mean, I think there are people thinking that way, that biological evolution is limited because of its randomness. And when you conceive a child with somebody else, even in the best scenario, it's really a kind of completely unplanned experiment, right? Got all these genes and, you know, they're being passed on to the offspring. You don't know how it's gonna work. It takes you, what, 12, 18 years to even start to get a clue about whether it worked well or not, you know. Whereas presumably, in a completely designed world, you could figure out what your goals are for, you know, humanity's getting better, and make sure that every time there's a new human, that they're always better than any human that's ever lived and so on, right? And you'd be completely designing everything. And so is that apocalypse or utopia or neither one? I don't know. And then the other idea Rich had is that why do you need somebody in charge? If the world is optimized for what humans want and need, why can't it be a completely automatic rule with nobody in charge, right? But then if you want something changed, there's nobody to talk to, right? What do? You know? So, I don't know. But it was informative to me because thinking about this next year, making good use of our time, right? There are a lot of ideas, particularly in David Pierce's 6-minute biohappiness revolution video, a lot of things in there we probably shouldn't do and shouldn't pursue, right? I mean, who wants to get rid of the gene for pain so you can't feel pain anymore and all this kind of thing, and just feel gradients of bliss all the time, where you're always somewhat happy. Maybe you start out of the day just a little bit happy, and then things happen, you get massively happy, and then a little bit less, and so on. It just seems to me that is kind of an unusual kind of torture. Who could imagine this kind of torture where you're feeling bad because you feel so good and it doesn't match your actual situation, right? And you don't like that you always thought you could rely on your body to give you bad feelings when bad things were happening and good feelings when good things were happening, and yeah, and suddenly you can only get good feelings. It seems to me that's not desirable, according to Kim Solas, right? And then that's the other thing. I mean, did you feel in my speed dating research video, the thing that is too easy is my statement that young people have to make the decision about. I think you can help with that, right? But why should it be just you? It seems to me that's not right either. Why am I off the hook? Like, I've been around for 77 years. Wouldn't I have any good ideas? So yeah, I think somehow that how it's going to work, how we're going to figure out what we're aiming for, that needs to be a more nuanced decision. Who's involved and why and how and so on. Yeah, that's what I figured out later on after pontificating about how it needs to be young people need to sign up for this, and yeah. What actually happened, it's kind of interesting, the after party, the 3 medical students who went to the after party and had a good time and ate our food, and yeah, I mean, it was great. But there's no evidence that the pitch video worked on them. They didn't show the slightest interest helping decide what we should be aiming for in the future. They just enjoyed the after party. Well, it's good somebody enjoyed the after party, but yeah. Anyway, so, and if you think there is like a long list of passionately interested medical students who are not in this room, there aren't. Like, I blind CC'd them for a little while, and then it was clear that like, they're not getting anything from this. They're not looking forward to putting on their CV, I helped determine what the big vision for the future with AI and humans will be. No, that's not something that they're interested in. So that's in itself a kind of interesting discovery, I think, right? It's not like you would take everybody in your medical school class and say, well, you know, everybody had strong opinions. No, a lot of them don't want to think about this for whatever reason. There are a lot of things that in theory you should be thinking about that actually you don't want to be thinking about. And for them, this is one of them, you know? It's like, who cares? Let somebody else figure that out and then I'll react, you know? Tell me what this future vision is, yeah. So, so Pram, what are you feeling now? Are we farther ahead now that we've gone around?
Yes, I had to rely on everyone's brain juices to get things going, but yeah, it looks good. So like, I'll try to figure out how to collect these items, and then in 20 plus years, if you get an email from Pram at U Alberta, don't be shocked, it's me, just reaching out to see if you want to help me open this. But also, like, I don't even know if emails will exist in the future, so we'll see how I contact you. And then also, I was just gonna ask Dr. Solas, do we have a box already? Like, I feel like this is like a lot of stuff, so I don't even know where we would store this.
No, we don't have the actual containers yet. But the space, you've seen pictures of it, there's enough room up there to keep lots of stuff. And it doesn't depend, I mean, I don't want to scare you, but it doesn't depend upon having, you know, electrical power or anything, right? The thing would be, the stuff would be safe up there. If the weather can't reach it, what we're currently doing is we keep the garage warm the whole winter and so on. I presume we'll be able to do that. The technology that does that isn't very high tech, so even if high tech stuff didn't work anymore, we'd still be able to keep it warm in there. So, I mean, it's sort of a reliable place to keep something. And the cool thing about it in a way is its monetary value is probably zero, right? So nobody's gonna be like plotting how to steal our time capsule or something, right? And it takes physical activity. When you walk into the garage, it's not even clear where the pull-down door is to get up there. So you kind of have to know what you're doing, and then there's this tool that you insert, and then the stairs come down and that sort of thing. But, so it seems nothing is absolutely secure, and it's not like being in a bank or anything, but still, I think if you're going to keep big things somewhere, like these cutouts, it's probably a pretty good place to keep them. Will there be another edition of the cutouts? Yeah, I think so. I think some future class is going to say, well, you know, now there's this new company. You may know that the company that made those cutouts no longer exists. They didn't survive COVID. So, banners no longer exist. There is a comparable company in Calgary. I don't know if they still exist. But still, there will eventually, it's a fairly common task to make these coroplast cutouts. Eventually there'll be somebody to do that again, and maybe another class will say, we're also going through a very unusual experience like the first year of COVID. So we should also have cutouts of us, because doggone it, you know, no human has ever had to experience what we're experiencing now, and you know, gotta capture us again. Yeah, so that would be cool to do that again. Yeah, I think that we can also think about, like, what is the value and how should it be displayed of all the videos from the course? You know, we have like everything going back to 2011. And I think in the long run, we'll have a better philosophy of why some of that is important and some isn't. Some is just kind of generic and similar to many other things. Some are sort of unique points where we move something forward. Like the first video that I did about AlphaFold and how artificial intelligence solving protein folding meant that we could solve messy human problems like systemic racism. When you look at me talking about that with these other students, one of whom is a person of color who's in, you know, computing science, and I think he's thinking, what Dr. Solis is talking about is contrary to everything I've been taught up until now, you know. And some of the other students, if you look at it now, it looks like I'm just sort of talking over them. They say something and I keep on talking, like that. I don't allow them to. I really look like a guy talking about something that needs extreme sensitivity, who doesn't have any, right? Just sort of bumbling through the thing. So I think it's kind of interesting from that point of view, you know, what some of the contradictions, the things that I'm trying to do probably include some things that I'm not very skilled at. You know, maybe I'm a highly skilled person at some things, but other things, like maybe talking about the analogy between protein folding and systemic racism is really not my forte. And maybe I've never been a protein that's folded. I've never been a person of color. Maybe I don't have the meaningful experiences that would make me really good at sort of those nuances. So that's why I think some of the videos probably are of substantial historical interest. Most of them aren't. Yeah, I'd like to see what happens with this particular one, you know. Yeah. So what do you think about the way that we're conducting the process in general? So what happened was, at the beginning of the course, there were 2 students registered, and one of them came to the storage compartment, and then a student from the past. Yeah, so there was Pram and one other student. So we completely emptied one of the 3 storage compartments. There's still stuff in 2 others. One of them is just completely jam-packed full with not terribly meaningful stuff, but stuff that's part of my life, and it's all sort of packed in there. And the other one, you can actually see what's there, and it's a little bit more interesting. So I think we get maybe one more shot at another group of students taking stuff out of that second room and having us end up with just the one, having had the 3. And we can do that, you know, in the next year or the year after or something like that. What should we be doing that we're not doing, or what shouldn't we be doing that we are doing? Any feelings about how the project itself is proceeding? So what about forcing the future classes to take part? It's been not a problem thus far. Nobody has said, well, that's ridiculous, I don't have any interest in that. It seems to be a naturally interesting subject for young people. But are there other things we should be doing? Should we be getting time capsule experts to come talk to us, if there is such a thing? Do you think that's a thing, or is it not a thing? Do you think there are people who are expert in that? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, maybe not experts, but I was thinking maybe opening it up to other university students. Because, like, I don't know if it's like major or program, but I feel it's like really STEM focused.
Yeah.
Maybe like other students from other areas have different ideas of what we can add. So maybe like even like having a poster with a QR code, maybe you can give suggestions like, oh, maybe add this to your time capsule, or something to think about that might
Right.
help.
So how should we do that? You know, there are interdisciplinary courses, right? There are
Yeah.
courses that are in between faculties.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start with those courses and say, you know, I at one point dreamed of being an interdisciplinary course, but the people in lab medicine pathology told me, give up that dream, we're not letting you do that. So anyway, yeah. So, but maybe they would have ideas
Yeah.
that would be valuable for us, because even though we don't have an interdisciplinary status, we kind of are that kind of course, right? So, yeah.
I think maybe even some courses, like if we contact some professors, we can go in, like they can offer like us 5 minutes, just like tell us like this is a project we're doing. We can like throw up the QR code on the board, because I feel like if someone came to my class, I would rather just focus on the time capsule and the actual class part, so that'd be a good distraction.
Yeah. Okay, well that sounds good to me.
I mean, there's gotta be like groups of people, not just at universities, but or like time capsule connoisseurs, right? And so it's like, I mean, you can even like reach out to like a public like people who do geocaching. I know it's not exactly the same as carrying out like a time capsule, but usually like the idea behind geocaching is like you head out to find something that's been capsuled, and then usually you're supposed to leave it behind and just sort of track it. So I'm sure there like communities exist in Edmonton you could reach out to.
So there's a group of young people, similar in age to medical students, who knew me very well, but have completely different lives. Those were the Tuesday night poetry at-risk youth people who I provided, you know, the infrastructure, lighting, video editing and stuff for their poetry between 2014 and 2019. And many of them are still around. Some of the poets are giving sort of independent poetry performances now and so on. It might be interesting to get their opinion about what we're doing, because, you know, I've had kind of a different influence on them. Like some of them were homeless at the time that they were presenting their poetry, and so they would go to the library, use the library computer to interact with me about, you know, the poetry edits and stuff like that. And it's just it sort of grounds us more rather than having completely more and more elite groups advising us, rarefied elite groups, academic groups, and so on. I think some of them where they have sort of gender fluid character where they're in danger every time they leave the house because other people think no one should look like that or, dress like that and stuff. And however dangerous this city is for the rest of us, it's much, much more so for them. And the one thing that I learned there, you might say, well, what was it like for me? I was like 50 years older than almost everybody there, the only academic, the only physician there, and so on. But the only dangerous thing, one night, one of the poets, the youth poets, asked me to give them a ride home. And I did, and I realized this is a dangerous thing I should never do again. They lived in like the most dangerous area of the city you could possibly imagine, in a habitation that it is hardly real, like you'd say, I wonder if this has like an address, can you send mail to this place, or is it just like an accidental place you might break into and stay, And I realized that this young woman was thinking, now that I'd done this for her, what else might be possible? And so I just never did that again. I mean, everything else was fine. I could interact with these people. It sort of, I think, evened out a lot of things in my life where I've been only looking at, the rarefied academic, elite side of a lot of questions that I never got to think about, people who lead really scary lives like that. So it would be good to get input maybe from them, the ones that are interested. I tried to write a grant where I used both the medical students and the at-risk poetry group as sort of people providing input. And the medical students were, cooperative, but the at-risk poetry people were very suspicious that I was like exploiting them, or that was the whole reason I'd been there the whole 5 years, was to do this stupid research project. And they couldn't believe how why didn't I make that motivation clear in 2014, Yeah, so. I don't know.
And I think I remember a couple of years ago we did the poetry event with, I think it was, I might be mispronouncing her name, but it was with Mallory Chipman.
Yes.
Yeah. I think having, and I think the theme was sort of the technological revolution. I think having a theme of like sort of like a time capsule theme, and having everybody sort of come and present sort of a poem with that sort of theme behind it.
Yeah. No, we could certainly do that. It's interesting though, the story about Mallory and me is quite easy to sort of document and see. We had planned, and in fact we did a lot of recording sessions and so on, to release the first ever full-length album for the future and all that jazz in June 2024. But then for both of us, big things happened that seemed much more consequential than that, and this deadline is sort of an inconvenient deadline. So some time ago, she and I agreed we don't know what the future date is, but you can think about my 80th birthday, which would be 2026 or, whatever, but there's no hurry, and there's a lot of reason not to do the album in June of 2024, because she's going to Japan, her first ever, Japanese tour. She's always had Japanese fans, but she's never actually been there. It's a really big deal. And yeah, and then similarly, there are things I'm doing regarding AI safety and so on that seem a bit more consequential than doing a musical album, you know? So, yeah. And yet, your opinion of me is heavily influenced by her. Because if you think about your lives as young people and, you know, Instagram for you, what it is and what it means and so on, the fact that I have a surprisingly youthful presence and all sorts of surprises, like you surprised by Volunteer Day, right, that I celebrated a few days ago, and then Suicide Prevention Day. You probably didn't know about that either, right? And so she's doing all that for me, and she's picking the time of the day when we should put up the new postings to reach the maximum people and all. So there's real science behind, and if you direct message me on Instagram, it looks like I'm answering, but it's really her. And she's very good at it, and you know, any fraudster trying to say, well, you know, he's old, I'm gonna trick him. No, you're not, because it's a 29-year-old singer who's, you know, actually interacting with you. Yeah, yeah. So, and that's valuable for me. You might say, well, how can you tell that? So, if you think about going to emeritus status, right, what does that mean? Probably none of you really have a clear idea what it means, but it's kind of clear. Your salary goes to zero. That's what it means, right? And so on. And so that was the plan for me until somebody noticed that I'm doing all these interesting things and having me right down the hall, because my office would also move. If I had, you know, emeritus status, I'd have to be in a different building. I couldn't be in the hospital anymore. So I think there's just no question that her activities led to the fact that nobody has a date for when I'm going to move, and yeah, so that's just cool. And so it was a very good idea to start an Instagram channel with somebody who really understood how the dynamic of that works, and it benefited me when DALL-E 2 came out, the first text-to-image artificial intelligence. I was like one of the first beta users, certainly the first physician beta user, because of the fact that you had to give your Instagram URL, your profile. You know, most people my age, you look at their Instagram, oh no, come on. Don't they know anything? What's wrong with them? Yeah. So no, it really paid off, and it pays off for the course. You may think that it's Reddit that gets us students, and it is to some extent, because there are these long statements there about, you know, what an interesting course this is and that sort of thing. But I also think that the Instagram presence is probably equally important, and yeah, so there's just no question about that. And it's good for my own sort of sense of self and balanced view of the world, that like the things, when I send a provisional posting to Mallory and she gets rid of some of the pictures and some of the text, what's left, I learn a lot by what she gets rid of, you know? Because what it means is the outside world wouldn't find that particularly interesting, or would get in the way of them being able to enjoy the posting, right? Yeah. So this idea that I'm learning from young people, some of it's kind of random, like I'm learning from all of you. And I've done that my whole career, the past 51 years, and that's unusual. But with her, it's much more specific, that, you know, I'm sending her drafts of things, she's fixing them to make them final, and then she posts them, and you know, all these people get excited about them in a way that I think if I was doing it directly would not happen. Yeah, so that's just very, very interesting. So I'm learning from that. Okay, so what about suggestions for the course itself? The Grozdanek family is playing an outsized role in supporting the course, right? I mean, not only your family members, but also your friends and so on. And so, is that a sign that the course is failing in some other way, or what do you think? Are you happy having that role for the rest of time, or would you like us to find another way to attract students that's not so directly related to your extended family? Or
Well, it was funny, we were talking about this probably a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling Hannah, I was like, well, we're running out of people like sort of our age to recommend the course to, just because everybody else is sort of 8, 9, 10 years old. So, but, I mean, I feel like just maybe better outreach to some extent would be a good idea.
Yeah.
But again, it's one thing to talk about like outreach versus actually doing the outreach. Because also you mentioned about the interest of medical students and sort of like making a change. I feel like people want to see change, but people just want other people to make that change happen.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
But I think there's certain consequential things that you end up doing that feel right for you that just wouldn't feel right for somebody else, you know? I think today, Abba and I had an experience of like the top guy, the surgeon who has the New England Journal article about pig to human transplants is you know, the best known guy in that field, got so excited about, you know, the Einstein quote in our draft abstract, because it happens to exactly describe his approach to pig to human transplants, where rather than using the highly engineered pig that has 10 gene changes, he's only using 3. And those 3 seem to be all that you need, and so on. So it fits with that Einstein quote very well. And you would think that we'd be looking at a larger group of medical students on that abstract, but we aren't. There are only 2, and those 2 people seem happy being there, and you know, I understand that Haba has time after the 8th, and the second year student has time after the 20th, and the abstract is due, guess when it's due? It's due at midnight, New Year's Eve. Who writes abstracts at midnight on New Year's Eve? We'll see if we're doing it then, or it's already done by then. But yeah, and so on the other hand, there are other things that you know, need doing that I think to other medical students will just sound like a completely natural thing for them, you know, and so on. Emily and Hava are both part of this lymphatics project, and that's going to be exciting in its own way. It's sort of much more practical, though, when you say, well, what is Kim Solis really? He's a kidney pathologist, right? Okay, and this is kidney pathology. Wow, that makes sense, yeah. Knowing all the thousands of other things that I do that don't have anything to do with kidney pathology, but that one happens to it. And yeah, it's so the resident working on that project, you guys haven't heard this yet, but he's so excited about teaching the two of you kidney pathology because he thinks, you know, it's an inappropriate thing for me to sort of teach the basics of that to you, but it's just right for him, and yeah. So anyway, that's what's destined to happen, and yeah. So I have a kind of feeling of you know, really fun future of many of the things that we're doing, many of the projects. What about the course itself? Are there things that you would like to see changed or different? What about from the TA's point of view? Like, both you and Pram have done important things for the course. It's not much overlap between the things, but yeah. So, does it seem to you like we need a different plan, or?
Perhaps getting more like newer guest lecturers in to speak, if that's possible.
Yeah.
I think bringing in more perspective would be really beneficial. I think all the guest lecturers are great, but I think maybe like incorporating some more in here and there just to kind of bring like different perspectives into the class.
Yeah. No, what I felt in the last year is in everybody's interests. I just had a lot of things related to AI that I needed to talk about, and the course is a good opportunity to do that. And yeah, but no, it's interesting. There has been specific feedback that we need different people teaching about AI, not changing Rich Sutton. There really isn't anybody equally him, but that we probably need different other people teaching AI, just to give us a fresh perspective. The politics are the people teaching AI. I really enjoy doing it and would hate to lose it. And you know, we can't have more than 5 lectures. We can't have like 7 AI lectures, 10 AI lectures, and it becomes just a different kind of course. Yeah. So I think something will happen where it'll become obvious. We have all men speaking. There are a lot of female AI people. I think that is one way that we could change things. Yeah. And but I think the other thing that I keep facing is that when COVID first came, I thought, oh boy, you know, I could lose the course now because it was unclear whether you teach face-to-face or you teach hybrid but anyway, having a course that's sort of unique and nobody else has ever taught such a course, it seemed vulnerable. So I asked the dean to teach in the course, and she said, yes, in principle, I will do that. but I have to wait until my life settles down to a dull roar, you know, it's like so many extraordinary things that I'm asked to do right now. So at some point in the future, I'd like to have enough people taking the course that I don't feel that asking the dean to speak would be like disappointing for her. Like, this is the class, you got these 5 people, that's it? You got the dean of medicine, yeah, right?
I think maybe pitching the idea to more undergrad students, because I think there's a lot of people that want to go into medicine. I think, again, like how we were talking about like the time capsule going class to class, I think you gain a lot of interest, because that's kind of how Hannah pitched it to me. And I was like, oh, like I want to go into medicine, seems like an interesting path, even though it doesn't focus on AI technology more.
Yeah.
It was still really, I think, beneficial taking it, so I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. You know, one of the funniest things that ever happened in the history of the course, Rich Sutton taught a course, he still does, I think, on reinforcement learning, and he wrote the book on that. He's sort of the world expert on that, right? So he asked me to come to his course and pitch my course to his students. And you might think that all the students would react the same, but they didn't. So a substantial number of students, and I can understand this, they thought he had enabled me to steal time from them where they could have been learning reinforcement learning rather than listening to my description of what my course was all about. And they were just very, very mad. And others of their colleagues thought that was so stupid that they would feel like that they were going to specifically sign up for my course just to show their colleagues how dumb that opinion was, that, you know, that it was the inappropriate use of class time to let Dr. Solis come in and pitch his course, yeah. But anyway, so, and I think that, like, it's fascinating, and I know you can't test this, so I can talk about it because there's no way to test it. Like, the Bletchley Park meeting was presided over by the UK Prime Minister. The input I gave is like the only really robust, positive view of the future. Do we know that the people at the actual Bletchley Park meeting all knew what I had said, or to what extent? I think a lot of them did, because it was specifically for them. You know, it was London Futurists input. If you had to advise people running that meeting, what would you advise? So I have a similar opportunity to do something like that this coming Saturday. And then there are 2 upcoming meetings like that, one in South Korea and one in France. And I don't know what time of the year the France one is. It'd be very cool if it's close to the Paris, you know, LABMP meeting and so on. But doesn't it seem there's a lesson in the fact that I even have the opportunity to say anything, right? Shouldn't there be millions of people with positive ideas about the future coevolution of humans and machines? And so my voice would just be completely drowned out by the din of the other millions of people, but there don't seem to be. There are a huge number of people with negative views and apocalyptic views, and AI is going to kill us all. It's just, you know, if you were to write this down as a story, somebody would say, well, it's completely unbelievable, you know. What is actually happening? So that this idea that we should pay attention to what we're trying to accomplish in our leisure time, we'll see, you know, if that idea bombs on Saturday, then I might not talk about it very much anymore. But it seems logical to me at the moment. And think of how much leisure time there is. Some people leading lives where you could say it's 100% leisure time, right? I mean, yeah, that's it. Even when they're at work, they're not doing anything very important at work. They don't like it. They're not thinking about work. You know, they're just sort of passing the time, right? There are a lot of people with those kind of jobs where basically their entire life is a life of leisure, and at present a random life of leisure. Okay, well, I think we probably let you go early, eh? So it's 3:07, 3:08. And yeah, I thank you for taking part in this session. I look forward to staying in contact with you. Yeah, so anyway, that's the story. And yeah, so, and let me know if you think I was wrong about the next year. Maybe you think the next year is just like any other year. Nothing special. Nothing special. I don't know. Yeah. So I hope you're right, but I don't think you are. So, all I have to say about that. Okay, so I'm going to pack up and yeah. Any?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.